Art Chat TV is brought to you by Linda Fisler Fine Art. Visit her website at lindafisler.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art Chat. I'm your host, Linda Riesenberg Fisler. And today we have Valerie Allen on our show. Just before I get into reading a little synopsis of Valerie's work, or her bio, however you want to say that, I just want to remind our listeners that we've launched Art Chat TV this season, our 13th season. You can catch us on YouTube, as always. It's always been there. I just kind of changed the name from Art Chat to Art Chat TV over there. We just are shy 47 subscribers to get to 1,000. And if you guys are YouTubers, you know that 1,000 opens the door to a whole bunch of other really neat things. So if you can hit us up there, that would be great. Valerie Allen is a professional artist living in Michigan. She received her BFA from the University of Cincinnati, go Bearcats, associate degree in interior design from Delta College, and postgraduate studies at Central Michigan University. She served as a curator of Studio 23 in Bay City, Michigan, and is currently a certified working artist for Golden Artist Colors, New Berlin, New York, and a master mentor at Mastrius.com. Just like me, we're two new mentors, so more on that as we get into our discussion. Valerie has lectured across Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, my old stomping grounds. I don't think we talked about that in the green room, but we will in a second. On painting, and she paints with acrylics, which I think, Valerie, I told you this in the green room, where I think you're our first acrylic painter on Art Chat, so welcome. Her lectures are presented at art departments, art guilds, art stores, and associations. She has taught art as an adjunct instructor at colleges and universities in Michigan. Valerie has juried expositions in the Midwest and was a juror for the 2021 Great Northern International Art Explosion. She has curated exhibitions. She has had many artist residencies. Valerie creates abstract and non-representational paintings in her studio located in, this is going to trip me up, Geisler?
Is it Geisler? You did
it. Okay, Enterprises, a business and art incubator in the Stadium District of Midland, Michigan. Valerie and I also have something else in common, if that wasn't enough. In addition to being an artist and a mentor at Mastrius, Valerie co-hosts a podcast called Art Ladders, the Creative Climb podcast, where, like our chat, she and her co-host discuss the creative process and about art in general. Art Ladders can be found on Spotify. So welcome, Valerie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate that intro.
Oh, that was nice. Yeah, I went out and saw your bio, and it was so nicely written. I said, okay, I'm gonna steal this. So
the way I love that.
Yeah,
glad that worked out.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I am from originally Cincinnati, Ohio. That's why I did the UC.
Yes, I was wondering how that came up.
Yeah. So we're big UC Bearcat fans, and my husband actually graduated from UC. I'm self-taught, just to give you some background on that. But I know, your BFA, and then you have all of their connections to the educational system, and still doing things that.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of curious, with me being self-taught and some of our listeners being self-taught, and I'm sure there are listeners out there that also have their BFA. How did you, at what age did you kind of decide, I want to be an artist for the rest of my life? And how did you start your creative journey? I'm sure you were very young when you decided that you wanted to do this.
Yeah, I was really young. In fact, grade school, basically. I'm not going to go back that far, but I just knew, mainly from encouraging comments from people very young, telling me, hey, you're really a good crayon drawer, so you should go into this. No, they didn't say that exactly, but moving on.
They probably said, look how you stay in the lines, right?
Look how she does that.
And that's why you have your every sense of, no, you're like abstract now. It's like, oh,
that's right. That's right. How did that happen? And I had very encouraging parents. They made sure that even though we grew up in a little town in Ohio, Hillsboro, Ohio, I don't know if you've heard of that. You did? All right. Hillsboro, Ohio. They would take us down to the city, Cincinnati, to the museum and cultural events plays at Playhouse in the Park, all these wonderful cultural events that would happen down in the Cincinnati area. So I was really exposed to a lot of that at a very young age. And I had I would say, extraordinary high school art teacher, Mrs. Morris, who just really, really gave us a background in art history, which is kind of unusual in a high school setting. But she really drilled down on the art history and connecting that with our work. And that is still very influential for me today.
Mhm.
Now, when I did make that transition then into college, I started at a community college, and I highly recommend community colleges as a launching pad for young artists. I live now in Michigan, and we have several community colleges up here that really, really have fine art departments. So for those first 2 years of your education at the college level, it just sets you off on a good start. It's very affordable, and you are very, very, it's almost, there's a lot of one-on-one time with the professors, and I really highly recommend that. So I started at a community college and then transferred to University of Cincinnati with that under my belt.
Right.
Now, with that under my belt, I was thinking, I came from a long line of teachers, and so education would have been my natural move to, a major in art education at school. But I kind of, I wouldn't say rebelled, but I made a decision. I was going to take more of the design entry level. The design entry was going to be my money making way to justify college.
Yeah.
And I thought at that time I was going to go into fashion design. So that's how I actually started. And I did 1 year of that. And in that year, you are required at the School of Art at Cincinnati, which is called DAAP, Design, Art, Architecture, and Planning.
Mhm.
Okay, so I decided to take a lot of the electives that were meant to be studio classes, which are fine art based. Well, once I was in those classes, after the first year, I was hooked. So
Okay.
I decided I'm going to switch majors. So here's a story for your listeners on don't give up the ship. And I'm looking around here because I see the meter man running around, and I'm wondering who's that out there? There he goes. Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
waiting for our trash picker.
oh yeah, it's that
So
kind
you'll
of
probably
day.
hear beep, 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 beep at some point.
That kind of day. So I said, okay, I love this. I want to switch to fine art. They said, oh, okay, where's your portfolio? Alrighty. In the design classes, the fashion design, there was no portfolio submission. So I scrambled and I put together a portfolio, which I thought was going to do it. I'm very young at that time.
Mhm.
And of course, it did not do it the first time. It did not get me into that to fine art department. And
Yeah.
I did not give up. Don't ever give up. Try it again. Because once you do it once, your name is in front of their minds when it comes up for the next portfolio submission. So they already feel like they know a little bit about you. And if they see some improvement or a lot of improvement, which they did in my case, then you can jump that barrier.
Yeah.
So I tell that story because I hope it's encouraging for young artists, not to take just one committee's word for it, not to take one curator's word for it, one juror's word for it. Keep trying. Do not give up. So I did. I didn't. And I ended up, of course, getting in, and then uh, kind of the rest is history. Only the medium that I was choosing at that particular time was majoring in drawing and printmaking.
Oh,
And it was the printmaking that really hit the button for me on my college days. I did a lot of lithography, I did woodblock printing, I did some etching, but the lithography end of it was so, so rewarding
Yeah.
and very labor intensive.
Especially then.
Especially then,
Yeah.
because we were working on the big slabs of limestone,
Yeah.
which required a forklift to even get it up on the press.
Right.
But I just found that community of artists and just kept me connected. you're in that printmaking studio, a lot of other printers are around. It was very social. I liken it to being in a ceramics department, that same kind of feel, because
Right.
you are dependent on the equipment. So, of course, you all gather there. So the conversations are just wonderful.
Mm, sounds great. So let's jump forward a little bit in your
Sure.
journey. A self-taught artist, typically, we may come to it late. We may start out by ourselves. We may not even study fine art. I
Mhm.
know Cincinnati Design Art, was it DAPP? Is that what you said?
D-A-D-A DAAP.
Sorry,
They call it DAP.
DAP. Yeah, that's what I
DAP.
thought. That
Mhm.
that school has a pretty good reputation. I mean, it's very hard to get into DAP in Cincinnati from what I've heard. So,
Mhm.
but besides that point, congratulations by that,
Thank
by the
you.
way.
Second try, but thank you.
Well, yeah,
It
um,
worked.
yeah, it worked. It's good. So did you, with that behind you, did you have income coming in from your art initially, or did you go off on what became the primary money maker? And we like to call it our side hustle because we live in the creative world and that's where we want to be. So did
Right.
you have, what was your journey like after graduating college? What were the things that kind of presented themselves as, well, they didn't teach me that in college, or those kinds
Oh
of things?
boy, that is so true.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, once I graduated, then reality hits. You have to make some money. You have to do something. While I was in school, I did work in different financial offices at the college. You know, those jobs you can get as a student. So
Right.
I would do a lot of that kind of thing, and that would bring in a little bit of cash. But after I was out, to find a job in the arts, very difficult. I could find a ton of volunteer positions, which I did at museums and things
Right.
like that to increase my knowledge in that world. But as far as getting a job directly in art, I would have to kind of mess with my mind a little bit and say, okay, this is going to get me there. So one of the crazy jobs that I did was working for the reservation desk at American Airlines. Now, how
Oh,
did I justify that in my mind? Well, I'm thinking, well, now I can travel. I can go to
right.
Paris, I can do this, I can do that. So that kind of led into travel agency work, which led to more travel. So I was collecting at that point information. Art was always in my mind, but these were jobs that were helping me step those little stones to get on my way.
Right.
So then I took another route. Okay, so I'm graduated with a printmaking. What do I do? So my next step was, oh, I see a job at a printing company. Maybe that's what I want to do. Well, this was a commercial printing company. This
Oh,
wasn't me making prints. And
right.
naive me, I take my big old portfolio in there of these, hand pulled lithographs, and they're kind of looking at me like, well, this is interesting, but this isn't what we're doing with offset lithography. This is corporate, this is business world. We're looking for somebody that will do marketing for us. Are you the person? And I convinced him I was the person because I was the creative and I could create marketing programs for them.
Right.
I could make sure that their display room had nice samples out and had some sort of logical graphic interest to show to their ad agencies that they were working with, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I could speak the lingo of color. So I definitely justify that job as one of my art hats that I wore
Yeah.
early on. And I loved that job. I loved working with the graphic artists. I loved working with the ad agencies, the art directors, the people in the production world, the printers back there working away on these sometimes impossible deadlines. I love the pressure of deadlines. I still do. And that all came out of working there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then as I kept moving, I started, of course, doing my work as the side hustle on the
Right.
side, started branching out, moving around a little bit, and getting into a couple of just little community galleries. And then when I made a major move to Michigan, then I was able to open my own little studio, very low key, and became known as an artist in this small touristy town and
Yeah,
opened a gallery there. And
cool.
that was a lot of fun too.
Right. So it's really kind of interesting because we go to this whole system of, in college learning the techniques and the
Yeah.
foundation of, painting or drawing or whatever our interest is. And then we go out into the business world and we have to start with real world business learning. It's,
That's right.
through the whole thing. I mean, I worked at Procter and Gamble,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, so you probably, in the printing job, you probably were doing work for P&G at that point.
Yeah, we could have.
And
Yeah.
it's so, it's interesting because my whole journey was totally different I mean, I was a technician at one of the tech centers doing product research, and
Mm-hmm.
always hated it when performance reviews came up because the thing that they would always grade me down on is creativity. And
Ah.
yet I was writing at that time and I was an artist at that time. And, and I just sit there and laugh. It's like, I'm sorry, I can't think of the next best thing for baby diapers. That just
Isn't that
isn't
a
in
great
my,
way?
my
Right.
creativity.
Yeah.
But
Oh boy, that's great.
yeah,
They are finding, yeah, that artists are, they're even calling it the new MBA. The MFA is the new MBA
hmm
because of what you're talking about, that creative spark that we bring to the table. So,
right, right. Yeah. And, it does, hopefully over the coming years, there's a bit of a change in the education where there are some basic business
mhm.
foundational classes so that you don't have to work your first 10 or 15 years
Right.
as a side hustle. You can
Yes.
start right out of the block. So
Oh, yeah.
that would be like wonderful so for
You
everyone.
know, and I do have to say at University of Cincinnati, they had a program in the design world that would be the architects and the fashion designers, graphic designers, where in the summers and I believe during the year even we would co-op, we would have a job that they would send us to. Well, I'm pretty sure I'm correct on this, but they've started that now with the fine art department
Good,
too. So
good.
that is an entry into that business world for sure. And the
Yeah.
other thing that they're doing, and this will be happening March 1st, they are taking a little clue from the TED Talk world, those wonderful talks
hmm
and Armin, my artist husband, Armin Mersman, and I will be giving a TED Talk down at DAAP, the Design Art Architecture Planning Department of Cincinnati, for Zoom viewing and for live viewing. And there'll be about, I believe, 8 different mini TED Talks. So I am thrilled to have been selected for that. That's going to be March 1st.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of fun to connect with the university that way.
Yeah, yeah. And will you have something out on your website? Because I'll put your website
Oh, sure,
address.
I will. I'll put the
Yeah.
Zoom I think the Zoom link is now available, but I'll make
Okay.
sure your listeners can tap into
Yeah.
that and your viewers too.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. So let's go like a totally different direction. We got a good basis
Sure.
for how you started
How it
out
started.
and
Mhm.
yeah, how everything started. So tell us a little bit, as I said, you're probably our first acrylics painter
Okay.
here. So tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about why you like acrylics, the process
Mhm.
of painting with acrylics, and kind of walk us through your process a little bit.
Oh, sure. I would love to. I'm a certified working artist for Golden Artist Colors, so I've had uh, lots of training. I've been with them since, oh my gosh, 18 years now.
Oh,
So
congratulations. That's wonderful.
I made the switch to acrylics, of course, before I interviewed and worked with them.
Mhm.
But my reason for switching, because I was heavy duty in the oil painting
Oh,
world.
really? Okay.
Yes. And I always tried to rush the process of oil painting.
Yeah.
I would want it to be dry when it wasn't dry. I'd want to move on. At that point, I was starting to layer a lot of different materials. I was heading more into the mixed media world.
hmm
And acrylics for me became very user friendly and very easy to layer, very easy to add other things to coat different collage materials. I just found it such an easy medium for me to adapt to. I wasn't one, I know the oil painters, and you're one, I know that the color shift that acrylic will do when it's drying,
Mhm.
it can be a little lighter and it dries a little darker, can be frustrating to oil painters, especially if you're a portrait artist or even a plein air artist. You want the color to dry really close to what you put it on.
Mhm.
So for me, as an abstract artist, that wasn't that big of a deal, I guess, because I could, since I'm layering, I'm not color matching exactly. It's the layer that counts for me.
Right.
So I love the range of products available, not only uh, thick paint, but thin paint, gritty paste, smooth mediums, thick mediums, gels. You go, grounds that you can draw on that have grit already in them. This wonderful product called Macacious Iron Oxide, which I just love saying, and it is beautiful. It kind of changed my world because it has just this hint of a sparkle, but not glitter. And I just love it. It's a soft gray. So I definitely just went all in with acrylics. And you can see a whole bunch of them right back there.
That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that it's interesting because you were talking about being able to layer and
Mhm.
and that I'm assuming with layering that also provides an opportunity for acrylics to become more texturized. Most
That yes.
and this is where I don't know a lot about acrylics. I
Mhm.
usually try to take any acrylic students that I have and convert them to oil. So
You're doing the opposite of me. No,
it's a good
you
thing
know
there are
what?
acrylic and oil painters out there, right?
It's all good because I even I have a lot of oil painter friends and I just love what they do.
Yeah.
And I just kind of casually mentioned that they may want to check out some of the grounds of acrylics and then think about oil glazes on top. I
Hmm.
mean, there's all sorts of write-ups and guiding tutorials on that.
Yeah.
So I'm all in with oil painters, but I like to make them aware that to maybe think of underpaintings with acrylic,
Yeah,
go
and
that
that
direction.
there's a number of different ways that acrylics actually do. I mean, there's a acrylic primed canvas out there
Yes,
already, and
yes,
there's oil prime linen. There's the whole range of merchandise and supplies that are available to artists
that's right.
today. When you think back, to
Oh,
the 18, 1700s,
oh
it was
boy,
what they had to do just to get to the point where they were ready to paint on something.
ready to have their binder and their pigment and put them together and away they go. And then the
Yeah.
new pigments that came out later on around the impressionistic years, the
Hmm.
brighter tones. I love all the science that goes around paint as well.
Yeah, and I remember I had one of the master artists on that knows a lot about um, past masters in history, and he
Uh-huh.
talked about how the paint tube, whether it was acrylic
Yeah,
or oil, changed the
yes.
way artists thought about painting, and was even starting to become part of the reason why the plein air impressionists took off
Uh-huh.
was because they didn't have to mix all of their paintings while they were chasing all their colors, excuse me, while they were chasing the light. It was,
That's
they
right.
could squeeze out a bunch of different colors, mix them in the studio first, put them in that tube, and then have it ready for them. So
Oh yeah.
like you say, the drying process is quicker. Can you dry acrylics with like a hair dryer like you can with watercolor or?
Uh, well, I do that in a pinch, and the reason I say I do that in a pinch is I want the natural curing time. Even though I said it's a faster drying time, acrylic painters still need to be patient because paint needs to cure at a very even level under, regular temperature. I
Yeah.
feel like using a hair dryer on it, maybe for thin layers, you're okay, but I really like the idea of it air drying. So when I say patience, when I'm working on a layer, I usually let that cure overnight, but then it's ready to roll. I work a lot with something called crackle paste, and it's basically a paste that cracks. I would call it a flawed paint film, but we fine artists, we love crinkly, crumbly, all that texture.
Mhm.
So for the fine artist, crackle paste is just so interesting. But I want that to cure and to dry very naturally. I
Mhm.
don't want to add other paints to it because that will disturb the crackle because the
Oh, okay.
binder will take over again. So
Nice.
so you have to really still respect the idea of everything coming to an exact temperature, almost like a baker when they say, let the rooms come to room temp, let the eggs come to room temperature. I always disregard that. And I'm sure a master baker would look at me like I was out of my mind by by doing that. What?
Yeah.
You're taking it right out of it. So we artists have these quirky things we do, and one of them is let room temperature take its course with drying time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really kind of interesting because when I mentioned the hair dryer and then you talked about, letting it dry overnight, I
Mhm.
remember another person that I taught with in Middletown at the Middletown Arts
Oh,
Center.
Middletown. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we lived for a while. But anyway, she would, I like would never recommend this just because the toxicity of different paints, but she would put it in the oven,
Oh my
turn the
God.
oven on.
Oh
And
no.
I was like, please tell me you're not cooking food in there.
Oh yeah. Boy, that I've never heard that one. I thought you were
Yeah.
going to say she put it in the freezer, and I went, because I've heard that too.
Oh, yeah. I
I've
wouldn't
heard
do
the
either one of
freezer
those.
thing, but with acrylics, you don't want to be throwing them in the freezer. I mean, there is an additive to acrylic paints that allows for shipping paint in cold weather.
Hmm.
You know, like you're on vacation and your paint was delivered. There's a couple of freeze thaw cycles you can go through without destroying the paint. But
Hmm.
no, you do not put acrylics in the freezer.
Or
But
the
I've
oven.
never heard the oven or the oven.
Anywhere where you have food.
Anywhere you have food, no, do not eat the paint.
So acrylic, I'm assuming too, like you have your range of cadmiums and different things
Yes.
like that, which is the reason why we're saying don't put this around food.
No, that's
Yeah.
right. Pigments, you just need to be careful, very careful. They find out more and more as history goes on. I know when I was in school, we were doing crazy stuff with paint, and we know, don't do as we did. Do like they say now. Yeah, be aware.
Yeah,
Mm,
and the range of amount of pigment, you could probably tell us more about golden, but
yeah.
I'm sure you know about other, and you please don't mention the brands because I don't want to get in.
Oh,
I know that
sure.
you are, representative with Golden, so
Yes.
you can speak to their paints. And,
Sure, sure.
there, I know with oil you can get from things that are mostly fillers that they use to stretch
Uh-huh.
a kettle of paint that they're mixing up at the manufacturing site. So in other words, they get more um, paint tubes per batch that they make.
Yes,
And
yes.
they'll be adding different type of fillers to do that, all the way up to, I'm actually an ambassador for Michael Harding, all the way up to
Okay.
pigment, a little bit of oil, no fillers, no binders, no
Yes.
stretching. If you look at Michael's range, you don't see, probably I'll shoot myself in the foot with this. Somebody will write me, I'm sure, but I
Oh,
don't believe there are any hues because those are also bottom of the barrel, mix them together because two different batches of yellow or whatever. Michael really doesn't do that. So, and handmade. So I don't know if that same range consists in the acrylics world.
yeah. Yeah, there is a highly pigmented paint is what professionals want. And
Mhm.
even if you're a beginner, it's what you want. It will behave for you. It's not going to flake off. It's going to be saturated. But let's say you are a student and you do really want economical solutions. The solutions with acrylic is to go ahead and bite the bullet with the highly professional grade. There's several of them out there. Of course, I represent one.
Mhm.
Professional is the key word. And then think about extending that paint with medium, such as gloss medium, matte medium, the gels, soft
Mhm.
gel gloss, soft gel matte. Um, because since it is so highly pigmented, you can add additives like that to it to extend it and make yourself a big batch of paint because you're exactly right. When you're putting in the pigment and you're putting in additives, you're making a big batch of paint. But you'll have better results if you start with a professional grade paint and then add the mediums to it.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that. Another good way for a student to work with paint, and a lot of the colleges are going to this now, several, because they were training in oil, but they're starting to switch a little bit to slow drying acrylics, which are out there. Slow drying acrylics, you can seal up in a palette with a lid on it, and it will stay through the course of your semester.
Yeah, we
It
do
will
that with
stay
oils
what they
all
call
the time.
open for it.
Yeah.
So that's another way you can kind of stretch your money,
Right.
because you're not throwing the paint out every painting session.
Yeah, all of that. I don't know about you, Valerie, but for me, I started out with very student grade paints, and
I did
I
too.
got to the point where I couldn't get my paints to do what I needed them to do. And I always
Yes.
fell back on, oh, it's me. I don't have that skill yet. I don't, and then I ran into how I became Michael Harding's ambassadors. I ran into Michael, and we had a very long conversation. And I was always compliant. I said, I always make mud. For some reason, I can make so many variations of brown, but I can't get to this blue color I want, or this, amethyst purplish, bluish, purplish color, and all this. And he said, he handed me, my palette was limited at that time, handed me that limited palette and said, mix up the colors you can't mix up right now. With those, it's a red, a yellow, and a blue, and white, and that was basically the limited palette at the time that I was using.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I had this range of colors.
It's amazing.
The pigments were not compromised like they were with the other brand that I was using, and it was just, I kept saying, well, here I am painting these miles of canvas, struggling along the way, and I'm doing quantity, but I'm not doing quality. And as soon as I switched to his paints, that quality
that oil paint quality.
And and now the quantity is things that I can actually market, and try to sell. It's the other things were, okay, I learned how to do that, but I learned how to do that for 10, 15 years. I didn't need to spend that 10, 15 years. It's when you say, I totally back you up on buy the good stuff first.
Buy the good stuff.
Your learning curve is going to be much different than if you start with the student grade and try to work through that. And I don't know about you in acrylics, but with oils, when I see a student grade paint, it almost keeps the painter or the artist in this little narrow hallway, because the paint will not allow them to experiment.
That's right.
As other, really, really good high pigmented paints.
Yeah, I like to think of it this way. In my college days, early on, the aesthetic of acrylic paint, and I don't know, you're probably too young to remember, but you might remember this. It was that it had this consistent matte sheen across all colors. Well, the reason for that is they were adding matting agent to extend the paint. So you were constantly dealing with that it was a beautiful aesthetic when every color had the exact same sheen. But in reality, isn't it better for the artist to make those types of decisions? So, when Golden came on board, they left out those additives so the artist can say, oh yeah, I do want that to be matte. So all I do is add matte medium or gloss medium, and I control the sheen. And you mentioned exploration with better grade of paints. That is the encouraging part of it. By making your own decisions as you're painting on what mediums to use, what texture you want to add to it, that is supreme for an artist. We are in control of our destiny at that point. And you're not just squirting it out of a tube and trusting that everything's going to work out a way. You are becoming your own scientist. And I love that part.
Yeah. And
direction acrylics are taking.
Yeah. And the great thing is the manufacturers like Golden and Michael, they're doing the experiment. Like Mike always
Yeah.
says, he looks like a mad scientist when he's in Wales, and and I'm sure Golden is probably the same way. The person that's in the studio going, or in the
Oh,
chemistry lab going, well, what happens if I mix this and this together and I get this
yes.
wonderful new color? And it's just
It's a
when I
wonderful
talk with
sight.
Michael about that, his eyes get like this big. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
and I'm sure
Oh,
you've run
yes.
into the same thing.
We do. We just have, I mean, they have fun. We have fun. I was lucky enough, you mentioned my artist residencies, but I was lucky enough to have a residency through the Golden Foundation there, and spent a lot of time at the factory. And that's exactly how everybody acts. We are mad scientists, and what are the possibilities? And anything goes. Try anything. And it's just so fun and exciting to watch that process, especially when you see an engineer acting like that. It's just so fun.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I mean, we talk about exploration, but when you do the exploration, how much more your confidence grows because you can
Oh,
get
yes.
yourself out of, oh, I made a mistake here. And then you go, now I got to throw, unlike watercolor, now
Oh,
I got to
that's
throw this
another
whole thing
story.
out, right? No, in oil, and I'm assuming with acrylics, you can correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
you build this confidence of, oh, I know how to get out of this mistake now.
I
I
know how
know
to
how
get
to,
out. Oh,
yeah,
so true.
yeah.
So true. And it, I use that actually in my mentoring group. I'll say, what's the worst that can happen? You can cover it up. You can start over. You can add another color. I said, I'll tell people 99% of my best paintings are all the paintings that I thought were completely messed up, that I had to invent and come up with a solution. It makes it a truly original painting at that point. And
Right.
nobody knows what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the other thing I say is, the person, the viewer, the collector doesn't care how you created it.
Yes.
They care about being transported, transcended, whatever, by your
That's
painting,
right.
how it speaks to them. So,
It's the magic.
yeah. And from a marketing standpoint, since you have done some marketing, I mean, if I stand there and tell them every technical piece that I went through on that painting, probably not a good idea, right?
Not a good idea. And that to keep it succinct and cogent and just on the point, mainly talking about, I'm thinking feelings rather than you building a painting, because you don't really, we get excited about all that, but we don't want our collectors' eyes to go, whoa, this is
Roll back
way
again.
too much information.
Followed by, I think I need more wine.
I think I need another glass of wine. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, I mean, and ask them what they're feeling from it. Don't try too much
Yes,
to tell them. You want them to connect to the piece, but you want to build a relationship with them, the
absolutely.
collector. So, yeah, just coming in and telling them, well, this is how I made this effect.
And this means this and this means that. Whether I would rather hear from a viewer and collectors how it makes them feel, and it gives me better understanding of my own work that way. And I will put that in my memory and keep that. I'm taking a we mentors have to be nourished as well with different
Right.
classes. I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm taking a writing class, an art writing class right now with John Seed. He wrote
Oh, I
Disruptive.
know, John. How did we not cross paths?
I don't know. That is
Have
so
you gone to
crazy.
track? Did you go to the representational art conference out in
No, I did not.
no? Okay. So we wouldn't have crossed there. So anyway, you're
But John
on scene.
Seed, he's on YouTube. Anyway, I'm in his class right now, and we're learning how to write about our art. And these are the types of things that for the collector, they would like to know, because he recommends we keep it short and concise and descriptive.
Hmm.
And that's the chapter we're on right now, anyway.
Cool.
But it's so fascinating to think that I went through all my college and all my career up to this point and have not had any writing courses or hints or background. So I'm diving deep into this writing thing right now. I
Right.
mean, we all have to make content, right? So
Hmm.
we better know how to write.
Right,
So I'm
exactly.
enjoying it so much.
Yeah, John is a good writer as well. I mean,
Yes,
I
he
do know
is.
John. I met John at the Representation Art Conference out in California. Actually presented a paper there
Oh,
last year. So,
okay.
and it was, I think I almost fell over. I don't, do you know who Roger Dean is?
Roger Dean. Where's he from?
He's from England.
No, I do not.
Okay, then that's fine because you probably do know, though, Led Zeppelin and Moody Blues artwork, right? On
Yes,
their
we were just
album
looking
covers.
at the artwork. Now I know who you mean. Yes.
Yeah, Roger designed those. So Roger was
Okay.
at
Of
our
course.
conference where I was presenting, and he walked
Uh-huh.
in on my presentation because he
Oh
said, "This
my
is the
gosh.
one that I was looking forward to hearing all the way through." And
Yes.
I was just like, I'm like, anything you say, sir."
Yes.
I mean, because
How
he's,
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, such an abstract painter as well. And
Yes.
yeah, so
My
it was
husband
interesting.
would have known exactly. He's a music buff and, of course, an artist, and
Mhm.
he would have known exactly who you were talking about because we just watched a whole documentary on him.
Yeah, yeah, he, very nice guy, very down to earth,
Oh, I love that.
very thoughtful. You know,
Uh-huh.
his questions to me, I didn't really want to answer because the position of my paper kind of argued both sides.
Okay.
When I wanted, what I wanted was a discussion among everybody who was listening to it because I presented my thoughts. You know, I wanted to hear
Right.
their thoughts.
You wanted to
It was,
have a
you know, what
conversation.
he kept like trying to get me to answer him, and I just kept smiling, going, "What somebody else think?"
Uh-huh. What
So that was
was the
fun.
topic of your paper? I'm curious now.
No, it's actually you can find it out on my YouTube page because I
Okay.
there. And I'll put it in the show notes as well. So,
Wonderful.
but
I'll
it
take
was
a
basically about whether or not when you're in the zone, if that's cognitive or not. If
Oh, this
creativity
sounds
is a
very
cognitive process
interesting.
or not cognitive. And Roger's
Okay.
point was it's not cognitive at all. We don't
Okay.
make that connection. And my argument was, yeah, you do. You just make it in a different part of your brain.
Oh, this sounds very interesting. I
Yeah.
love those sorts of conversations. I
Yeah,
will
it
definitely
was,
watch
I
that.
was nervous as can be. You would
Oh,
think
I can
so with all of
imagine.
this, right? But talking
Yes.
in front of actual people sitting in a room,
Wow.
I was blown away by the number of people who walked into the room to hear me talk, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
about this. And then the second thing was having Roger and
Oh, that's so
walk
exciting.
in. So, and then I also had John Scruton on the show before, and yeah, he's why beauty matters, his big thing. So having,
Okay.
talked to him, I was broadcasting live from track the first year,
Uh-huh.
and Roger and John stopped by to be interviewed by me, and I was blown away by that. So yeah, so
Wow.
as you probably know
Sounds
from
like
your
a
podcast as well, the
yeah.
connections you make doing stuff
Oh,
like this is amazing.
yeah. That is the whole thing. When you and I were in the green room talking, and you mentioned something about, is there something you wish you had done earlier in
Yeah.
your career? And yeah, I can tell exactly what it was, and it was networking.
Hmm.
I wish I had been more aware of networking capabilities from day one, because, like you're saying, now we're doing the podcast. That's become a huge networking opportunity for us and opened up several different doors that we would never have achieved any other way. So, learning about networking and not be afraid to dive in, try something, again, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, they
You
can
know,
say no. No, I
that's
don't want to come
right.
on your show, right? And
That's
and it's
right.
and it's like,
Yes.
okay, that's fine, you're lost.
Yeah.
And you
No,
move
but
on.
but
So
but 99% people want to share their story, and it's just a great way to connect with people.
yeah, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, and if you don't, that's fine. But I really see silos in the art world out there. It's like
Okay.
oil and acrylic can't talk to one another. Well, yeah, we can. We're doing it
Okay.
right now.
That's
But I'm
right.
in this silo of artists that follow these masters, current masters.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm in this silo of artists that follows this master. And one of the things that I think podcasting has done for me is really opened my eyes to how siloed things are. I mean, there's the impressionist painters who follow XYZ artists, and then
Mhm.
there's this maybe more representational or non-representational that follow ABC and DEF artists.
That's
And
right.
it's like never the three silos will cross. And I think one of the things, we talk a little bit about Mastrius, and you can talk about your course over there. But
Sure.
that's one of the things that I like about Mastrius is that first of all, they recognized me as a master artist, which was cool, and a mentor. And
It's
but
very, very
secondly,
flattering.
aside from that, is that they're looking at art not only as artists, as in oil or acrylic or watercolor or mixed media or whatever, but they're expanding into other disciplines of the arts,
Yes.
meaning songwriting and writing, and I write nonfiction and fiction books, and so being able to mentor other people, creativity is creativity. I want to get rid of
Right.
the silos.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
absolutely want to get rid of the silos, and I think Mastrius is trying to do that, which made me very proud that they wanted me to be a part of this. And so tell us a little bit about your experience mentoring
Yeah.
over at Mastrius.
Oh, yeah. And just to touch on that silo idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear this with the realist and the abstractionist, and it's like, "Ah." But the thing that bonds us together, art materials. That's our crossover. Everybody needs art materials. And so that world is very much a fluid, I feel, back and forth, non-siloed area. New products coming out all the time, new tools to work with, new mark making. I love that about the art material world. But back to the mentoring world, my class, my mentorship and group, it's a wonderful group that meets monthly, as you know, and I give homework, and I think it's the homework that is the most important part of this whole deal because we all um, we all have to produce. One thing that's hard for artists, me included, is to keep producing as a habit, to fine tune that habit of getting into the studio, crossing the threshold, and making work. It's so easy for me in particular to be distracted by other shiny objects. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I encourage the homework. I always have a introduction. The other thing I wanted more of in school was knowing who the contemporary artists are at the time. So that's introduced during the group. And then we have wonderful, wonderful discussions. And it's a fun group. We're looking for more members. So if that sounds like something you would like to do, and I would say in that group, it's pretty much abstractionist. That doesn't mean totally non-representational. You can abstract objects, and it's very much part of that language. So we would
It
welcome
does have
you.
its own separate language, doesn't it?
Pardon?
Non-representational versus
Yes,
abstract versus
abstracted art.
representational versus impressionism versus
Yes.
realism. They all have
Yes,
definite definition to them, or
that's right.
meaning, I guess, is the
Yes.
way to say it. So you have a foot in each world, right? Abstraction and non-representational.
Oh, yes. If you go to my website, you're going to see a series that I'm working on, a couple of series right now that are very much image based. They're using image transfer, which is a mixed media type approach. I use a lot of collage, but there are recognizable objects in there, but they're used in a different way. So that for me, I'm abstracting those images. And, through double exposure or tearing, collaging, that sort of thing. So it's not entirely, my body of work is not entirely non-representational. Even if you see one of my paintings that is non-representational, you better believe I have a story, a literal story running through my mind based on real things. Yeah.
Sounds interesting. I'll put your website above you when I edit this. So
Okay.
So at this point, jump over and look at Valerie's artwork and her process and things like that out there as well. So anything else that you like to add? You mentioned in the green room that you have an abstract class coming up. Is that?
Oh, I do. I have an online class coming up through our Art Ladders I'm going to call it division, I guess. But it's advertised on Eventbrite, and it is a 4-week session, and it's called Abstraction Now, and we cover topics and assignments, and we check in and have a critique, and it meets every other week for 4 weeks.
Nice, nice. That sounds
Yeah.
great. So, have you been enjoying Mastrius as well?
Oh my gosh, I have been enjoying Mastrius so much, and I'll tell you, their events that they have weekly
Yeah.
are unbelievable. I attended one yesterday, and with Mitchell and Mark, and Mark Eanes, I have been following on Instagram, and did they both did critiques of paintings, and it was so valuable.
Oh, nice.
And I encourage people, even if they aren't signing up at this point for complete mentorship, go ahead and sign up for the membership to get the events. You will
Right.
get so much out of it.
Yeah, and there is a 30-day free trial. So, and they
Yes,
have events every week, and not just one event a week. There's a
that's
number of
true.
events a week. So
They
even
do.
your 30-day free trial, you can get a lot in. I don't know if that includes their event histories, like if you can go back on their, but a lot of stuff is also posted on their YouTube channel.
Yes, there's
So
a lot of fun
subscribe to
things.
them as well, and you'll get notified when a new video drops.
Oh, yeah,
That's
on the
free.
YouTube channel, if somebody wants to know my teaching style, you can go there to a Meet the Mentor. You might have one too, Linda, out there on YouTube.
We're getting ready to schedule one, so because
Oh,
I'm very new.
excellent.
I'm very new.
So
But go ahead.
excellent. My Meet the Mentor YouTube is out there, and I'm doing a demo. So you get a little feel of what I'm all about.
Right,
It's a good
and
way to
we'll include that link also in the show notes, and for the
okay,
video,
appreciate it.
for the folks watching on our chat TV, the link is above Valerie's head, so or somewhere
Okay.
where you can read it. So just look around the screen; you'll be able to see where that is. I think we covered everything. We talked about Mastrius. We talked about your process.
Yeah.
And I'm in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how I could add different materials to oil, and I still haven't figured that one out yet. So I think you're right on saying that acrylic is the perfect medium for that. I do know that you could probably intermix. Well, this is maybe a question. Can you intermix acrylics with watercolor in your collages in the work?
You mean oil and acrylic or
Acrylic and
acrylic and
watercolors.
watercolor? That I could do. I could do
Okay.
acrylics, especially if I used an acrylic ground that would absorb the watercolor. It could be a beautiful look.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
a lot of times I'll just add water to my acrylics to give that water media feel as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, all the oil painters out there are going, wait a minute. My instructors told me that oil is the most flexible thing. It's a flexible medium because I remember being told that a long time ago. So
Oh, yeah.
sounds to me like acrylic and watercolor might have a one up if you're going to be doing abstract and non-representational work.
Oh boy. Uh, you know what? I say just look at all artists, all of them, because you look at someone like Monet and his oil painting, man, you can't go wrong. So
Right,
it's it's all so beautiful. It's just the way you want to work, really.
right, right. What you're
Yeah,
comfortable with, what you want to learn in, what
that's
you want to
right.
be known for,
Yes.
years from now after you're gone, kind of
Yeah.
conversation in your head. Yeah,
Mhm.
but take a look at Valerie's website. Also Valerie's Meet the Mentor session at
Yeah.
Mastrius. Good luck with all of your things that you have coming up. You're staying very busy, and
It's
it
a
was
busy,
nice.
busy time.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
nice meeting a fellow Cincinnatian. So,
that's right. Be down there in a few weeks.
okay, there you go. So,
Okay,
great.
Linda.
Thank you so much, Valerie. It was very nice meeting you. So,
Nice meeting you, and thank you, Linda, for this opportunity. I really
no
appreciate it.
problem. Yeah, it's
Thank
fun.
you.
So, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Art Chat TV is brought to you by Linda Fisler Fine Art. Visit her website at lindafisler.com.